Hello everyone and welcome to the Ticker.com's news channel on YouTube. On this channel, we review stock markets and discuss financial news, market trends, and economic data from Wall Street to Global Street. So let's dive in. We begin our review of the global economy with key releases in the US, Europe, China, India, and Japan. Sellers were in charge for the second week in a row as US investors sold high-flying mega-cap stocks and adjusted allocations as the Fed prepares for the anticipated soft landing. The U.S. economy accelerated to annual pace of 2.8% in the second quarter, while inflation cooled in June, indicating that the Federal Reserve has more headroom to cut rates than previously thought. The growing expectations of rate cuts and soft landing of the U.S. economy, meaning inflation slows without deepening the economy into a recession, drove investors into small-cap stocks and cyclical sectors, which are better positioned to take advantage of lower rates. Friday's market rally was powered by a benign inflation report that showed waning inflationary pressures. The personal consumption expenditures price index rose 0.1% on the month and 2.6% from a year ago in June. The core PCE price index, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, gained 0.2% on the month but held steady at 2.6% from a year ago. The PCE price index is preferred by the Fed's policymakers, but the index is controversial as it significantly understates the inflation experienced by most urban families. While overall inflation measure is cooling, the core measure is stubbornly high and well above the Fed's target rate of 2%, suggesting that the Fed is more likely to wait a few more months before announcing a rate cut. U.S. housing market continued to struggle amid the weakness in existing and new home sales in June. High home prices and elevated mortgage rates are raising affordability issues for buyers, and median sales prices for all existing housing types increased 4.1% to a record high of $427,000, and total housing inventory at the end of June increased 23.4% from a year ago to over 1.3 million. The annual rate of new single-family home sales declined to a 7-month low in June. The median sales price of new houses sold in June was $417,000, the highest since March, while the average sales price was $487,000, the lowest since January 2023. Across Atlantic, a private survey of private business activities confirmed stagnating economy in the Eurozone, and Spain's jobless rate eased in the second quarter. The People's Bank of China unexpectedly lowered key interest rates to support the government's annual economic growth target rate of 5%. In Japan, manufacturing activities contracted in July, but the service sector rebounded, indicating halting progress. Moreover, the Tokyo area inflation accelerated for the third month in a row in July, which could convince the Bank of Japan to begin interest rate increase after the policy meeting next week. In India, the union budget called for higher capital spending for infrastructure development while balancing the social welfare demands and job training programs to ease high youth unemployment. The government also lowered its annual deficit to GDP target rate below 5%, winning praise from domestic and foreign investors. Let us review key events in global bond, currency, and commodities market last week. The yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury stayed near 4.2% after personal income and spending rose at a slower pace, but core PCE inflation stayed well above the Fed's inflation target. Texas crude oil declined 5% to below $77 a barrel and fell for the third week in a row amid China demand growth worries, despite positive U.S. inventory data. Natural gas prices in Europe stabilized around 32 euro per megawatt hour, and traders monitored the progress in restarting the U.S. supply at Freeport LNG terminals following Hurricane Beryl. The euro eased from a 4-month high of $1.09 amid growing evidence of stagnating economy and weak consumer demand in the currency union. The yen strengthened to 154 against the U.S. dollar ahead of the Bank of Japan's policy meeting next week, amid rising hopes of a rate hike after inflation accelerated for the third month in the Tokyo area. We now shift our attention to major stock markets in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. The S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq Composite declined for the second week in a row as investors rotated into smaller companies and cyclical sectors after Alphabet and Tesla reported weak quarterly results. European markets closed down amid weak results from leading corporations and a stagnant economic outlook. The Nikkei 225 stock average extended losses to the second week in a row and dropped 11% from the July high, entering into a market correction. Hong Kong indices plunged 3%, extended losses to the second week, and erased this year's gains after investors dialed back hopes of supportive measures from policymakers. Indian market indices extended weekly gains to the 8th week in a row amid positive earnings from leading domestic corporations, but worries of higher capital gains taxes dented market sentiment. Let us shift our attention to merger deals, market movers, and earning updates from leading companies last week. 3M, the diversified healthcare and consumer goods company, reported better than expected earnings in its latest quarter and raised its full-year earnings per share outlook. Dexcom plunged 40% after the medical device maker reported weaker than expected second quarter revenue. Southwest Airlines and American Airlines reported better than expected results and guided headwinds in the current quarter, but Air France-KLM struggled and cited nearly 200 million euros of lost revenue because of Paris Olympics. Chipotle Mexican Grill, the fast-growing restaurant chain, reported quarterly results that surpassed market expectations. ServiceNow soared 13% after the cloud computing company reported solid second quarter results. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, reported better than expected quarterly results, but YouTube's revenue disappointed investors. Tesla plunged 12%, and the electric vehicle maker reported that automotive unit sales declined for the second quarter in a row. General Motors, the automaker, reported better than expected second quarter results and lifted its annual earnings outlook. United Parcel Service dropped 13% after the package delivery company reported lower than expected results in the second quarter and lowered its annual capital expenditure budget. Informa, the UK-based event management company, agreed to acquire Essential plc for £1.2 billion or $1.5 billion. Louis Vuitton, LVMH, and Remy Cointreau joined other luxury goods companies and reported weakening sales in China, but Hermès reported an increase in sales in the second quarter. In the week ahead, U.S. investors are looking forward to monetary policy decisions by the Federal Reserve. The central bank is expected to keep key lending rates steady for the 8th time in a row, and investors are looking for clues about the rate path and the Fed's view on the economy. U.S. economy is expected to add 185,000 jobs in July, slower than 206,000 in June, while jobless rate is expected at 4.1% and wage growth of 0.3%. On the earnings front, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, MasterCard, Toyota, AMD, and ExxonMobil are scheduled to release their results. In Europe, the Eurozone, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy are set to release their GDP and inflation reports. The euro area inflation is expected to ease to 2.3%, but inflation in Germany is likely to hold at 2.2%. Moreover, the Bank of England is likely to hold its key lending rates amid rising speculation that policymakers may cut rates for the first time in 4 years. In China, investors are looking ahead to the release of business activities survey in July, providing first economic signals into the third quarter. In Japan, investors are anticipating the release of retail sales, jobless rate, industrial production, and housing starts data. The Bank of Japan is expected to announce its monetary policy decisions and tapering of government bond purchase programs. You can review daily U.S. and global financial market news, stock movers, earnings releases, SEC filings, and economic updates on ticker.com and 123jump.com. You can find the latest financial books on Redera.com, keep up with financial industry events on eventsinamerica.com, review ETF and mutual fund performance and in-depth profiles on tickerfunds.com, and review market updates and stock movers in India on niveshak.in. That's all for today, and we will see you